on some of the children's programs during the winter. And so that's why you see a little bit of a dip in number of programs and attendance as compared to, say, November or September or October. Questions? No. All right, that's it for that portion.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the Library Trust Fund report.
Yes. So this is, again, provided by the city. This is our library trust. As you can see here, we had a beginning balance. So this is, again, up through December. The next quarter will be probably next meeting or afterwards. Slight revenues, from dividends, investment earnings, and a very small portion of items sold at the library, which are headphones, tote bags, just fees. Then we've got the 23-24 budget expenditures. I am currently researching to learn more about each of these because from looking at it, looks like they were budgeted, but nothing's been spent. I don't know if Jennifer here has any more information about this.
No, we'll have to get with finance and then we can bring an update in March.
That's what I'm thinking too. I did receive, let me see, information about what each of them, but they're more or less self-explanatory. The NIHOF donation is restricted use funds targeted towards adult and teen materials. That could be books, audiobooks, manga, anything. It's just limited in age. Library technology, that one was earmarked for new computer, basically replacement of equipment, CD drives, hardware. Literacy projects, again, that description essentially was very general. It was just projects related to our literacy program. Same with the Pioneer Room. Again, funds earmarked for use in the Pioneer Room. And last, youth services library, same thing, projects related to our children's area. So far, I don't have any documentation as to whether those are placeholders, whether we actually have to spend them this year, or anything like that.
No, you don't have to spend them this year. I think we did a consolidation and eliminated one category early last year. Can't remember exactly when. But we've not added a category in 5 years that I know of. So that's something to think about.
Okay.
Or maybe just have a general catch-all category that would work rather than specific stuff that doesn't.
Got it.
I think too, one of the things you may, want to include the staff in, Reno, is given these, buckets and what they're allocated towards, the staff might be able to come up with some opportunities as to how they can spend the money and better benefit our community. I think that'd be something I would be interested in seeing because, we have the authority to approve it. I think we just need to get in before a certain period of time in order for that to be allocated appropriately by the city. So, yeah, happy to hear from the staff how they'd like to use the money.
Sure, and I can already say that for the youth services portion, we're deep into researching a grant possibility provided through the state, well, really through federal funds that then funnel through the state to target and improve play spaces in the children's area. And that one caps at $75,000. So depending on how we look at the grant right now, if we can say 25,000 matching or something like that, would really go a long way towards getting us. So that's something, or even just looking at that aligns very well with plans staff and I are developing to enhance our children's area. But the same goes with the Pioneer Room. There's plenty of ways I can think of off the top of my head to spend what's allocated in the trust to bring more services and possibilities to that space for the public and for staff. I'm still learning all the trust funds, so, but I appreciate any input, any ideas, and of course you all oversee the trust spending, so. Yeah, any questions? I don't have any answers, but this is the trust report.
Jennifer and I were talking a little bit about the $300,000 we keep hearing about that's on its way, and I can't remember what the last update was on that. So I was going to take the action item of contacting finance and copying everybody on their response.
Yeah, as far as we haven't heard anything about it,
Yeah.
correct, Reno? Yeah.
I have not received an update. I know that it was accepted. That's the last news I received.
John, thank you for, you're going to reach out to finance and inquire? Okay, thank you.
All right, no more questions. Move, if you'd like, to strategic plans, goals, and objectives report.
Thank you, Reno.
All right. So as you all know, every month we go over our progress on one of the various elements of our strategic plan. This month we are going to go over the Embrace Emerging Services goal statement. The Escondido Public Library provides experiences that reveal the library is more than a place for books and is the center for lifelong learning in Escondido. This one has quite a bit of strategies and objectives. I won't go over everything. I will say, as far as educate residents about modern library services, this is something that I am constantly speaking with staff about. The fact that, a lot of people in our community don't know what the library has to offer, where we're at, what's free, everything, but they still question. And so we are really pushing, as right now in the middle of annual reviews and goal setting, improving and increasing our outreach efforts across all age groups. So already this year, for example, I was at Love Esco Days, said hi to Merrick, people stopped by. I was really impressed to see her be there. We have up and coming a program at the San Diego Children's Museum. I'll be speaking to a Rotary Club in the coming month. So we're really targeting groups that we think need to know about the library and what is happening and the value we bring to the community as their public library. Same that aligns well with our raise awareness of EPL services. I recently pulled our data to see which are our most used groups, so who's checking out materials the most, so high circulation based on age, found a number of peaks and a number of valleys. The most heavy users are no surprise, as they shouldn't be if you've been to the library. For me, it was a little bit surprising as far as ages. The highest circulation among children goes to 12-year-olds. Then it kind of like stays fairly level, and then kind of flattens out right as they hit high school, and their craters when they're at the age of 23. So it stays fairly consistent, and kind of 23-year-olds are our lowest circulating population. The highest peak after 12-year-olds would be, well, really the highest peak among all readers are parents. So it's an age group of 39 to 43. So not only if they're doing their own reading, they're checking out for family. And then again, our next peak is right at retirement. So it's 65 to 70. So those are our peaks. So 12-year-olds, family age, and retirees. You can imagine the rest are valleys. So that's where we're going to be trying to target programming and materials selection as we look forward, because like, we already know what's working. Now we can identify, okay, what's happening at age 23? We know what's happening, they're looking for jobs, there's a lot of concerns right after college, but the challenge now in getting towards staff is, okay, what kind of programs and services, materials does that age group really need that we could offer, or we're partners in the community to offer, to make them have a reason to come into the library and check things out. Same with, between having kids and retiring, that's a life stage. So what is happening there? And that's usually, once the kids stop reading, like the storybooks that we're reading to them, then it's kind of self-guided. And you as a parent have other concerns. So again, what can we offer that's more family focused, or having them all have a reason to And even post age 70, which is when we see the dip again, there's multiple reasons for that, but some are more natural than, use of the library. But again, using the data that we have to figure out what are the best approaches for our programs and collections to bring them both in and get less of a valley and more of a nice kind of evening of the distribution of how things are checked out. Of course, encouraging reading. We continue with our summer reading challenge. We just about wrapped up our winter reading challenge. I don't have the numbers for that just yet, but from what I've heard from staff, it's been a good program so far, well received. Basically, it's a smaller scale version of a summer reading program that we had in January and February. Again, we're trying to fill in those gaps during, say, the winter break or getting back to school and getting into things, getting them excited about reading throughout the year. And of course, our literacy and education programs. Yesterday, I attended a statewide literacy training for new directors and new literacy coordinators. So I learned more about what the state does to support literacy. We get hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding through grants for our literacy programs. And that's an area I'm looking to really bolster, especially the impact it has, highlighting that more in my reports both to you and in our annual reports and in our website. In the new website, we'll actually have a dedicated button to literacy, which we don't currently have, to bring more of that focus to a major service that has great impact on our communities. So growing that is a high priority for me in the coming years. And there's a lot of other things here. These ones introduce innovative, I believe it's supposed to be technologies, and be innovative and technologies. So especially with the technology, I do want to add more technology-centered programs, especially for adult learners. We have a lot of programming geared towards, young teens, tweens. We've got our STEAM program that we have every Saturday. We have a lot of programs in that age group involving coding, but there's not much in the way for adults as far as computer help or basic digital literacy for adults or seniors. And so that's a goal for our adult services team moving forward. Same with lending of technology, which is why last time we discussed adding some more categories to what we circulate, and then eventually adding those to the fee structure so that way we can circulate tablets, hotspots, similar items that can help bring more access to the digital resources. Something that's a ways away, but I'm researching how libraries are using artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and things like that, because in my mind that's going to be a tool that's going to become part of the workforce, and there's going to be a need to bridge that threshold of use, understanding how they can be used for, say, resume writing, job applications at the beginning, but then also beyond that. And especially in our literacy services, if you struggle to write in English, it can be a tool to bridge the gap to understand, okay, maybe I know what I'm trying to say might be this, but the AI can help them write it in a more formal or more structured way to kind of help bridge that gap for access and economic development purposes. Yeah, and of course, looking for more ways of going out to the community is another goal, and again, that ties into that outreach. So those are kind of like our short-term and more long-term plans as far as this category goes. Questions, comments?
Just a quick question about the educate residents about modern library services. I think it was last meeting we talked about the end of year report, the 2023 report. Any updates on that will be posted on the website, sent out on social media?
Most likely it's going to go out in our next newsletter, at least for our patrons. And then the website, I think I have to double check whether we're going to upload it to the current site or whether we're going to wait until the next one. In either case, it will be on the website. Let me research to see where we're at on that, but I'm pretty sure we can post access that pretty easily.
Yeah, I just have heard from a few different residents that would like to just know more about the library. It'd be nice to just point them to a year recap. And then also it could be an introduction to you as well.
Two questions. What did you think of Love Esco, the event?
I was very happy to see the amount of people attend. I know it's like, I think the first time they're doing it, and the turnout was amazing. I think the newspaper reported 1,200 people. We had around 100 people stop by my booth, which, isn't, I mean, it's what I expect. We weren't giving away the free coffee and chocolate. But overall, I was happy. Most of the people that stopped by were library users. Some of them did not know about our, what is it? Shop local, read local, shop local. So I gave out a number of those brochures. I can say almost all of the businesses that had been partnered with us in the past continued this year. So in January, we're doing the renewals. So on my to-do list is to meet with all of them and see how we can make sure that we're branding it on their storefronts, and that they have brochures, and that we're cross-promoting, which is the spirit of the agreements, is that they promote us, we promote them, and everybody benefits, especially in the downtown core, where the majority of the businesses that our partners are. I was very happy to see Love Esco. We were kind of late in responding, so we had not the best spot, but I liked it. I was up high near a tree, so I wasn't getting muddied. We were lucky that it had stopped raining by then, so that morning it was very nice. And I think the days before and after we were very lucky. I was very pleasantly happy with the program and the event.
Oh, good. I was too, but I was down in the mud. And you want to speak to another Rotary Club?
Sure.
Okay, I'll send you a schedule.
Yep.
Are there any other groups that you're targeting that we can help connect you with?
Honestly, anybody you think would want to hear from us, I'm happy to either speak to them myself or send a staff member. I had lunch with John today, and we were just discussing, how many places don't know what the library offers, even though they might be major nonprofits or community organizations in Escondido. And, that isn't unusual. It just means that the library has to step up and reach out and kind of make sure that we're informing them of all the variety of resources, even the ones you can get online, without having to step into the library. Of course, we love it when people visit, but we know that that isn't the case for everyone. But we do have something for everyone, online and in person.
Do you already have contact or relationship with the coordinator for Love Esco?
I have Lillian, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have her email, yes.
Okay. It would be great to reach out and give her a tour of the library and one-on-one with her, since she's so involved in economic development for Escondido.
Yeah, I agree. That's certainly something we can do.
Any other questions? Okay, we can move on to the library director's report.
All right. So we've got a couple of grant and other information. Let's see what I have here. Oh, yes. So as far as the renovation and library grant associated with it, I believe they shifted it, but at the time it was scheduled to be discussed on January 24th. I think they eventually voted on January 31st. Council did to approve the contract with IDS. And that is the firm that will be doing engineering and design work for the library renovation. I believe we'll have their first meeting with their representative tomorrow morning. So I don't have much news beyond that, other than we selected somebody, they were awarded the contract. I believe it's been signed, but I, again, don't know that. But that's kind of the goal. So the $740,000 will go towards design, engineering work. They'll also be doing site visits to see what has to be done and really looking at the infrastructure to give us an idea as we go along as far as the real costs and estimates for all the work that is planned, particularly to the HVAC, electrical, the critical infrastructure for the building. Yep.
Go ahead, you go ahead.
Reno, who from city is participating?
Who from the city? We've got the planning department for sure, building and maintenance, landscape, myself. That's kind of the core team. Everybody's names, I unfortunately haven't memorized everybody, but that's kind of the core group along with from LSNS, Heidi, my supervisor, joins the meetings, and I'm forgetting anybody.
So Laura McGlynn from
Laura.
Public Works is the primary project manager for this.
And she's the one that presented to council.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just questioning if it would be helpful to have board representation to be involved in this process.
The meetings are bi-weekly on Friday mornings. I would say I'm not sure whether that's something the board typically would do. I can ask to see whether that's feasible and whether who among you would want to do it. Alternatively, I would just presume that I would just keep you up to date on our monthly meetings. But beyond that, I'm open to whatever can be done.
Yeah, my only, I don't know if we'd want to get in the way of that, but I would definitely like to know if you're unhappy with something that's going on there. That would be, that we could be an advocate for you and your staff. Without getting political.
And of course, I can submit specific reports regarding what happens at the meetings, going to keep you more updated. But again, if you're able to join us, I'm not opposed, but again, I'm not too familiar on the limits of what the board can or can't do when it comes to things like this.
I think for me, mostly we just want to know what's going on and how the process is going, because when it's just silent and things are happening behind the scenes, we don't feel updated on the information. So if you would give us more frequent and special reports on that, I would be happy with that. But I would like to ask my other board members what they think about that.
I agree. I think just in conversing with the general public, sometimes they're hearing other things, and I don't want any of us to be caught off guard when we come across those conversations. So I definitely don't think any of us need to join those bi-weekly meetings, but definitely having an update.
Oh yeah, just as many updates as possible because we are being asked by people within the community about this. I would just ask if the contract says when this will all start, and then when does it have to end? It seems like a really tight window to do a lot of these renovations.
The timeline for sure I can get to you. I think early ER, I think in December I gave you the big picture timeline. And as you said, yes, everything is very much tied to a very specific deadline of when the grant funds have to be spent. And the city and LSNS, we're all working with the two now contractors, Griffin and now IDS, to make sure that everything is clicking as expected as far as the timeline goes. But I believe as part of the RFP, which I think now we can share, there is a very clear timeline of what we expect as far as when everything should be done. And then bi-weekly updates will keep you up to date as far as whether that is actually true.
Thank you.
Now, we just stopped on bullet point 1, so
Okay.
please proceed.
No, it's good. So I'll be sure to give you more routine updates essentially once So far, there's not been much to date on beyond this bullet point, but especially now that we have a contract with IDS, we should see more movement. And then with guidance from the city, I'll be able to share with you what is happening. 2 budget updates. So, the first one I just wanted to share because, as you might have all heard, California is perceived to have quite a bit of a deficit this year. And so as part of that, the governor did post his version of the government, and that included some cuts to library-related funding. I included in my report this month just 2 addendums to kind of give you some more context and information regarding those potential cuts and how they might affect library funding statewide. Most of it is, related to one new request from the state library for ongoing or new projects that has more or less been frozen in the future budgets. And there are some cuts to existing programs that were already budgeted. So primarily the grants related to the library Build Back Better, the infrastructure grants. So there was a second round of funding. We weren't part of that one. We were awarded a grant in the first round, but the second round is highly likely to be cut. Again, unlikely that will affect us, but we do ask that if you want to ensure continued funding, just reach out and let your representatives and state legislature know. It's like, here at Escondido, we're far along in spending the budget. We've already contracted, as you've heard, with IDS, Griffin. We have a timetable. So we're well into spending. So the likelihood that they would claw back anything from us is low. But there's always a small chance, which is why I do encourage you to reach out, let people know, and give them that information. Again, I added those 2 addendums, one from the California Library Association. That was kind of more of a general overview of what the cuts are. And then the second one from the state librarian, and kind of giving news about some programs that had been requested as new, but we're not going to get funded. One of those included funding for something called Brain Fuse and Career Online, kind of support online service. I looked into it here at Escondido. It's pretty well used as far as an online resource goes for us. We had last year a little over 3,000 sessions with around 1,200 unique users, which is pretty solid for a tutoring database or resource. So given the fact that we might not see funds for that from the state, I'm looking to see how we can cover that with our existing database budgets. Because I don't want to cut something that's being used. So if it's within the budget and we can do it, I'm going to keep it. But again, something just to be aware of. We might see other resources that we get through the state might be cut as we see. Again, it's all dependent on the governor and the state legislature approving a budget. So some of these cuts might not happen, some of them might. It's just so that you're kept aware of what's happening. Second bullet is more local. Again, this was passed by council. Just wanted to keep you aware. You might have read it in the news that city recommended that ARPA funds from the COVID recovery plan be used to cover the expenses for managing the library. So this is the library management agreement. It's $6.1 million-ish dollars. And so this covers the contract that the city has with library system services through the end of 2026, the fiscal year 2026. So that was, I believe, approved on the 31st by council. And for more of that information, you can ask Jennifer about what was done. But I've copied the wording from the city's recommendation into our agenda today. Questions about these 2 before we move on?
I do. Do you want to? Okay. So just to clarify, right, and unfortunately I did not see this in the news. Yeah, weird. However, so if I'm getting this right, we rescinded the current contract and will be negotiating a new contract for a shorter term. So now we go to June of 26 as opposed to June of 27. And then we save $3 million per year in the process, or $3 million total?
Jennifer Shenik, Director of Economic Development, overseeing community services in the library. So as you're all well aware, the city is facing budget constraints, and simultaneously we received direction from the federal treasury that the use of ARPA funds was more clearly defined as needing to be under contract sooner than we originally anticipated as the city. So with that new fact and piece of information, city staff worked to make sure that we were going to expend all ARPA funds prior to the deadline so that there was no clawback. So by moving the contract under ARPA, it allows the city to use those funds within the guidelines required, and it helps alleviate some of that structural deficit that the city is facing currently. The city is looking for ways to alleviate that deficit long term. So this puts the contract on 2 years, but currently there is no budget solution to reduce that structural deficit from the general fund of the city.
So what is the difference between the ARPA funding and what was funded for LSNS?
Yes, so currently the contract comes from the general fund. So we're paying the LSNS contract from just general fund monies for the city. This moves the contract to an ARPA funding, our federal source of funding, therefore alleviating the general fund budget by about $3 million a year. So the contract amount will be the same, the funding source will be different.
Okay. And then my last question is, it says beyond this action, there's no future funding for this service. Does that mean there's no future funding for the library after 2026?
That is correct. Currently, there is no additional general fund revenue or federal funds after 2026 for the library. And the comment I'll make on this is, as Reno mentioned, he's in the community advocating and continuing to promote, as you all do, for the value of the library in our community. So as the city and the community looks for future options for general fund revenue, the library is a really important part of that conversation.
So in the conversations then about the budget, the library has been decided to not be funded past 2026, and that has been approved by council as well?
Correct. So on January 31st, this item went to council as part of a larger package to talk about ARPA funding. And for example, projects were on that list and other city services as well. There is a city council subcommittee that specifically looks at our budget deficit and is working to help come up with solutions for both reducing costs and revenue opportunities for the city. And we are going to leave no rock unturned. And the two council members that sit on that subcommittee are Mayor Dane White and Council Member Joe Garcia. So they are meeting regularly to discuss this. Another item that was added in that conversation, for example, was the California Center for the Arts. There is currently a contract between the city and the California Center for the Arts. And with the same presentation, there's 1 year of funding for the California Center for the Arts, and there is no additional general fund revenue funding or federal sources of funding to sustain those operations after 1 year.
At the next meeting, do you think we can have a presentation on what those cuts have been across the board, and what has been chosen to be funded by the council?
Yes, absolutely. And I can also include in that presentation the revenue sources that that subcommittee is also exploring, so that you have a general awareness of some of the ways we're trying to recruit or find new sources of revenue for the general fund.
Okay. And I'm sorry. At what point would we start planning for the closure of the library? Would that be a year before, 6 months before, or when are we trying to find that funding by in order to make sure that we have continued services?
So by the end of this calendar year, the city will have a better idea of if a revenue measure maybe passes on the ballot, maybe there's other potential items that go on the fall ballot. So that will be a really good litmus test for what our financial future looks like. And then once we see what those ballot measures, what the results are, then we would be planning for the future in December in whatever direction we go.
Okay, thank you.
It was just more logistic based, and I think Carolyn's question kind of covers it, just giving enough time. But I would love to hear from Reno, of course, across the next year, if staff looks at this in a detrimental way and they start leaving, how we address that, and then also just updates about library services and how often they're meeting to negotiate. I think that could be beneficial too.
I'll mention that staff concerns regarding funding are high on my list of priorities and something that I'm consistently discussing with Allison S. Leadership, including all the way up to the CEO, Todd. And so we are aware of the structural deficit and the needs and what happens post-2026. And also, I keep abreast of the initiatives that are going on, ballot initiatives, and we are working with I'm working with Allison S. to see what can we do that's within both the law and within our contract to maintain awareness. And primarily our goal is really to emphasize the value that the library brings to the community and what it would mean if they were to lose us as a resource for everyone. That's the approach right now we're taking.
And I'll add one comment to that as well. Citywide, it has been a struggle retaining staff because of our budget issues. We have seen many city staff members leave for other municipalities. Our rate of pay is lower than the average salary for other municipalities, so we're seeing people leave for other cities, water districts, etc. But the staff that has remained is very optimistic, and we're looking forward to a brighter future.
Yes, thank you for both of your comments there. I appreciate it, and hopefully a solution's on the horizon.
I have a question. So kind of in conjunction with how we're trying to find more general funds for the future of the library, how is the city thinking about this in regards to the renovations, right? So we're planning for the future here where it's very uncertain, and it looks like we're investing $750,000 into getting all this information about costs. So how is the city thinking about that?
So part of the library renovation is related to a grant as well. And so what our approach is to work with our current set of circumstances. And we know that a library renovation is necessary for that building right now. And then we'll have to look at what happens by the end of the year to understand the future of that asset. So it's a city-owned asset, and we want to make sure that it is in the best condition for the use of the library.
And the grant money can't be spent any other way. And if we don't spend it, we lose it.
Exactly.
So let's keep driving toward the cliff.
Any other questions about these bullet points? I'm very thankful that Jennifer joined us today to answer these questions.
I think just to say that we look forward to that report.
And to finding a solution and to keep serving the community. Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on. So as far as getting more money, we've identified several grants that I mentioned earlier during our strategic report section. One that we are very optimistic will have a good chance of getting is the Play for All, which is an award of $75,000 to renovate the toddler play area. One of the reasons why I'm targeting this is one, that it's available, but two, since the second floor isn't really targeted for any of the infrastructure renovation grants, I do want to try to prepare that space for enhancements. So that way we start seeing improvements. And this grant, if awarded, would take place starting next year. So basically it runs July of this year through June of 2025. So there'd be a good time in there to prep the space, get it ready, and make it look better. So that way, if and when we close for construction, again, it's an if, I'm not sure, but it's likely, then we can have a lot more development in that space. And we're targeting other grants to bring enhancements to the rest of that second floor, including enhancements to a tween area, so for ages 9 to 12. So we're looking for grant opportunities for that, funding sources to kind of bring in more tech and make it a fun space for that age group as well. But overall, it's more about enhancing and finding funds for a second floor. So that way, any enhancements that happen on the first floor will also have enhancements on the second floor to coincide. So that way it looks like we've done a full and holistic renovation as much as we can for all the public-facing services with grant funds or other funds. I'll also mention that, again, I've been looking at budgets and we've been able to, within our own budget, add 2 positions. So we'll be re-adding, prior we had an archivist position running the Pioneer Room. We will have that soon. And the circulation supervisor to help run our circulations for our customer service team. That position just posted internally, so we're looking for internal candidates first. And then eventually, if we don't find anybody, that might go up to the open public, but I always try to give our staff in-house a chance to apply first, because we have some really talented people, and I think we'll have a great circ supervisor in the near future. And that, both of these, my goal is to have them staffed by March. So when next report, you might see who those 2 are, if we get them.
Let me add on the grants that you're applying for, if there's a requirement or it would help to have some type of matching funds, don't hesitate to come to us.
I appreciate that, and that is something that we're looking at. Right now I just received a lot of, I sent out requests for information to a variety of vendors, and so now we have an idea of the costs, given that $75,000 cap. So we have a realistic budget, and now we're going to go, next step is building the grant application and checking, see what can we do as far as in-kind contributions for matching, and then if there's a gap, where we can see those funds bound. So for example, that $25,000 trust fund is something that we might look into using, matching funds from our foundation or from friends, etc. Of course, the less we have to take from any of the trusts, the better. So that's what we're looking at first, to see what the actual gap is going to be. But yeah, as the vendors say, the more money we can throw at them, the better.
Just a quick clarification question. You mentioned closure potentially. Is that just the second floor or the whole library? Or?
Again, it's hard to say, and that's what IDS is going to be able to tell us as we go through and they see the state of the building. But as I've gone through the conversations, construction really likes to be able to do the construction all at once and not be interrupted by having to deal with people on site. And so once we know more about what are the needs and the recommendations for renovation, we'll plan for it. And that might include closing either the second floor, whole building, part of the building. Again, it's too early to say right now. We are considering alternatives, like for example, using the Pioneer Room and the Mathis Center for some uses. The Literacy Annex that's also on the library campus can also be used. The city also owns the former funeral home that's on the campus, and so that can also be a use, even if it's just for staff offices. So there's a lot of areas that could be used to retain some level of service, but we won't really know how much need and what kind of service will be needed until we know for sure whether, for example, staff can stay in the building or whether staff have to be moved out of the building. That's what we're aiming to get down as something we're asking IDS as we're going along, and it's key in their contract that they let us know like what impact on operations any of the renovation will have.
Yeah, I'm curious if it like affects the customer satisfaction as well. I don't know if when you're in Florida or if library services dealt with this before, but just even a minor disruption, I imagine, can affect patrons.
Yes. And so we're aware, we try to, just like with COVID closures and partial usage, you know, we have strategies we can employ to continue, you know, curbside service, again, moving computers somewhere else so that we still have computer access. That's not maybe in the exact building. So different techniques where we can try to minimize impact. Obviously, if the whole building's closed, there's going to be impact. But again, minimizing that and making sure that essential services are still accessible to as many people as possible.
Well, I guess we'll cross that once it's
Yes, and
more of a...
I'll keep you all updated once we learn more, and again, in those bi-weekly updates.
Thank you.
Last but not least, just some highlights from the programs. Again, adult services, again, very popular second concert, like usual, 100 attendees. Our artsy adult programs, they did spin art this past month. 22 participants. I keep hearing very positive things from adult learners saying we really like the craft programs. Beyond that, the succulent swap, which is the picture on the far left, where's my bullet? 109 attendees, so very popular. That one was the first time we had an outside speaker come from the San Diego Cactus and Succulent Society to give some more added information and context. So this is part of my encouraging adult services to do a mixture of, you know, lifelong learning. So if they're coming for the succulent swap, a lot of people are going to want to learn and know about what it is they're trading and swapping. And so having an expert come in and kind of tell them, okay, this is how you take care of this type of succulent, this is how this one works. Cactuses or cacti, you know, are a little different. So it was nice, and it's reflected in the amount of people attending. So it's a nice way of continuing engagement with the library. And in this case, I feel it's related to sustainability. We're sharing succulents. We're not having to go out and buy them. We're getting clippings. So it's one of our strategic goals, again, those sustainability goals. That's reflected in our adult services programs.
That's great. I didn't realize that the Cactus and Succulent Society was going to be there based on just the literature that I saw. I thought it was just like a straight up just neighbors trading, but in the future, if they're going to be there, I think it would be beneficial to highlight that.
I agree, and I don't recall off the top of my head whether that was a last minute addition. I know sometimes it can be hard to nail down speakers since we tend to plan 2 months ahead at a minimum, and a lot of people don't do that, and I don't expect most people to be working 2 to 3 months ahead. It's just how we have to in order to make sure we have our calendars ready. But for sure, if we see something like this, I think even updating it on our social media and online calendar, and at least the indoor print posters, sometimes the calendar can be a bit late to update it, but for sure, I think, like you said, more people would have come, or at least a different variety of people might have been coming if they knew they would be able to have an expert there. Pioneer Room highlights. Our collection keeps growing, so our Pioneer Room staff added almost 200 new items. Again, with the archivist position that we'll be getting, that'll be a full-time position, and they'll be able to dedicate a lot more time to digitization, conservation, outreach, to let people know about Pioneer Room and special collections. For example, they discovered an unprocessed collection of materials, so now they have more time to kind of review it and kind of prioritize what is going to be scanned, how it's going to be preserved. They also will have more time for exhibits in the space, and perhaps getting outside exhibits coming in for historical significance. We're also working to strengthen our partnership with the local history center and society over at the Great Data Park. So I'm expecting a lot of great news in the future related to the Pioneer Room as we dedicate more staff time and resources to really enhancing it. For me, special collections really are special. They are what make each library and community unique. And so focusing more of our resources towards that, I think, is a valuable investment to preserving the history of Escondido, but also engaging everyone in Escondido with their own history and capturing that for them. Questions about Pioneer Room? Yep. All right. And last but not least, youth services highlights. We had a couple of fun events. The main one was we had the Lunar New Year celebration. As you can see here in the photos, we had an author come in and speak. Dr. Virginia Lohagen read from her book, What Was Lucky New Year, and we also had the typical arts and crafts, some snacks, some fun celebration. This month, we had the line dancers come in. That will be next month's report, but again, showcasing the cultural diversity in the San Diego and Escondido area is still something that's very important to us. So events like this, I always like to see. Right now, we're working on some Black History Month events, especially in youth. Again, in adults, they struggle, but I'm working with them to find and identify appropriate programs for adults that highlight our areas and our nation's Black history. That was surprisingly challenging for them to find presenters for, and so I'm going to be working with them to see how we can do better. And that is it for my report. Any questions overall? I'm not going to go too much into the addendums. They are there. We kind of highlighted parts of it, but just know that the best way to ensure funding is to speak and let our leaders in Sacramento, our local representatives know the importance of funding for our various programs at the library. Any email, call, all that helps, and is greatly appreciated.
Thank you for getting that together for us, Reno.
I just have a question. Great report. I love seeing everything that's going on in the library and all the engagement that we've had. I do have a question. I think Library Appreciation Week is coming up.
Yes.
Do you have plans for that?
I don't remember off the top of my head what we're doing. I know I just got a request for volunteer appreciation, which falls within it as well. Most likely we will have, I want to have something that highlights the economic impact of the library. And also I know, because it aligns with February and Valentine's Day, our children's department has a number of interactives saying how you love your library, so capturing that as some comments. But I meet with my program leads tomorrow, so I'll get some more information.
Okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head what beyond that we're doing for Library Appreciation Week.
Okay, in your history, is it something that the leadership team sometimes plans for the staff, or is it outside?
It varies. It can go both ways. I would say historically here, I don't know what is done, but Library Appreciation Week is also a good way and reason to reach out to, say, for example, stakeholders and community groups, letting them know this is the impact. Sharing with them our library annual report is something. So I think aligning the publishing of our annual report will be a good week activity, just to, debut it, market it around social media, put it in our newsletter, etc. That's where I think we definitely have to go at a minimum.
Yeah, I love that strategy. In the past, it didn't seem like internally it was celebrated, so we as the board tried to show our appreciation and linked with the community, and we would reach out to local restaurants and just try to provide like a lunch or breakfast and things like that. But I definitely you know, we don't need to do the same thing, but we're here if you would like us to continue to help with that. But I would like, you know, you to make the decision on what you would like to do.
Of course, yeah, and I'll definitely check with our library leadership team and see what they've heard from staff they really like and what has worked, and recognizing staff's contributions, but then also, like we were saying, our volunteers' contributions to making the library wonderful.
Thank you.
2 follow-ups. When is Library Appreciation?
Let me get the right date.
Thank you. I didn't look it up before I came. See if it's
April 21 through 26.
oh, so we have time. Okay, I
Yes.
thought it was early April. Okay, good.
And then second,
Sometimes it switches, so it's good to, let me see, and, oh wait, that one's a different one. See, it's all slightly different. April 7th through 13th.
Oh, okay.
So it is still in April, but the 7th through the 13th.
Less.
Yes.
and then general ballpark number, do you know how many staff and volunteers you all have?
Staff, I believe, have 26, is what I remember. And volunteers varies, but is around between 100 and 120 active volunteers.
Got it. Thank you.
If we were going to help with this, would it need to be on the next month's agenda or March? Can we put it on the agenda just to make sure that we're helping celebrate Library Appreciation Week?
Yeah, by then I'll have whole staff to see what they'd like to see for Appreciation Week.
I think that'd be nice.
Okay, thank you, Rena. Trustee library use report. Would anyone like to go first? Thank you.
So this past month, I was able to visit the Central Library down by Petco Park. I'm in kind of a book club with some coworkers of mine, and so we scheduled a tour and took it, and it was actually phenomenal. Like, very interesting, very cool space. Like, I think the architecture is fantastic, and it's really interesting because the dome over the top of it is bigger than the Capitol dome, which I didn't really realize, and you can actually like go up to it and see it. They also have a special collections area that you can go in and just ask questions and like do whatever you wanted, you know, to a certain extent, right? But it's very, very cool. We got to see a book from the 1200s that they had. It was very cool. And then also, it was very interesting and good to see how they serve our homeless community and patrons. They do have a social worker there during certain times of the week. The other thing that I thought was really cool is they identified for, you know, folks who need it, where they could, you know, find showers during the week as well. And then it also offers them some privacy. They can book, you know, individual rooms and have those available to them to, you know, do whatever they want. But I thought it was just very cool to see, and it was really interesting to see too, you know, what we may be able to adopt here, or it's always good to see and compare and bring back good ideas.
I'll mention that I actually went there yesterday for my literacy training, and so I too took the liberty to take a tour, and I got led into the special collections as well. So I understand the appreciation.
Thanks. What I've been doing over the last month is trying to share as much as possible any library events through the Old Escondido Historic District social media accounts. I currently oversee those, so I'm trying not to be biased when it comes to the library posts. But there's usually engagement there. Part of it is the Read to the Dragon program. I went to that in January, took my kids. They seemed to enjoy it. The timing was great for it too. It was, I think, on a Friday afternoon. So they were out of school and weren't immediately gravitating towards screens. I was able to take them to the library. It was perfect. Great way to start the weekend for anyone. I'm trying to get more involved in connecting Reno with people in the community too. I somewhat failed, but sound like I succeeded with the Love Esco stuff, so that's fantastic. And my hope there is that more people volunteer with the library and more word gets out about everything that's great about the library. So that's my update.
I have to say, Francis, I've seen you doing your work on social media, and I've caught up on information that I didn't know from your shares. So good job. And Rita, I just want to say, I don't know if it's me, but it feels like, and maybe it's Francis, but it feels like I'm seeing more about the library out in the community. I don't know if it's more events or more sharing, or it just seems like it's gaining traction and momentum. And so I don't know if you've tweaked things, but great job, because I don't know what the difference is, but it's working. Like it went from a very word of mouth type of environment to now like it seems like people are sharing and talking about different things that are going on in the library, and it feels like it's coming out more often. So great job on that. And then I already mentioned this, but I plan to tell you guys that I am reapplying to serve on the board, and I'll submit my application, and then I'll interview with City Council in March.
Yeah. Thanks, Francis, for sharing that. And Reno, I know we had a conversation that I'll share about regarding social media. And I'm happy that you're reapplying, Virginia. So I met with Reno about 2 weeks ago to go over the meeting process, and we just kind of had some conversation about the library and how to get more young adults, that 23 age population into the library. And so actually, my cousins and I actually developed a book club, so we're meeting monthly. And I had recalled seeing that the library had the book club in a bag. So we checked one out, and it's pretty cool because there's 8 copies of a book. All the questions are there. I have a little kid, so I'm just like, I'm not going to spend the time to make my own questions about books. So we really appreciated that, and it's got a quite long list of books that we can choose from. A lot of them I've already read, but it was exciting, and so we're all excited to kind of share out our book last month and that. So it just kind of makes life a little easier to have that. And so, but during our book club, we were talking about, how, like I was asking them, what would make you want to go into the library? And I think for young adults, other than the career help, I think a lot of it is just socializing. Because a lot of things have closed here in Escondido. There's really not much. People are going to Carlsbad, they're going other places to kind of hang out. So there, even if it's like a bingo night for young adults, right, or loteria, right, because of the population, just to have things where they can just kind of come, hang out. Maybe there's like a raffle, the winner of loteria gets, I don't know, a swag bag or something. Or maybe our local business partners will provide food, that's donated, etc. So my whole thing's always like, bring them in for other things, and then they'll get excited about the books. So socializing was a big aspect for them. I didn't make it to the succulent swap. My mom was really bummed because she also wanted to go to that. And I'm glad to see that there was a lot of people, because that means there's probably a good variety of things. And then one of the things that I talked about with Reno was about the social media. And so Francis and I, as part of the outreach subcommittee, are going to be meeting to kind of come up with recommendations for the social media. I think it's someone just kind of took on that task. There needs to be a dedicated person, but really to highlight special moments in the library, rather because right now it just kind of seems very informational. Like, we have artsy adults, or we have succulent swap, but to maybe have like more of a structured schedule for posting. So we'll be meeting to kind of talk about recommendations to give to Reno. So hopefully we have something to share out in March.
Okay, well, I've just been getting back in the swing of things the last couple of weeks, but I guess this is the meeting where we talk about our meeting with Reno. So we talked about I remember sitting through focus group meetings where I was a silent observer and listening to counselors working for 501c3s who said, well, the library should be doing this and they should be doing that. And we already did all those things. They just didn't know. And so we talked about various ways to get the word out, and he's much more open and pragmatic about this than anybody I've talked to before. And just as a businessman, I'm really impressed with the research he does on the money we're spending for databases and this and that to make sure that the usage that they're getting justifies spending the money for them. And, you know, I don't think that's ever been done to the depth he's doing it, and it should be done like that every year. So I'm very impressed.
Scratching my head on how you're doing everything. You're some kind of wizard, but that'll be another conversation. Okay, anything else anyone would like to discuss? Okay, great. So we'll hear from you about the change in the meeting time.
Already said it.
Oh, perfect.
She already put it like that.
We're good? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Efficient.